I get calls on a regular basis, because I've helped people in the past. I can't help people all the time. But it's like, to me, that says something, where it says in scripture about taking care of the widows and orphans and, people that are homeless. Like, if we had somewhat of a focus together as a combined congregations, I think we could have more of an impact in this area of Brevard County than we do.
I'm here with Pastor Chris Adams of Christian Life Church in Palm Bay. They're located fairly close to Palm Bay Road. If you're heading west, you just gotta get off of I-95 heading west. You'll have Hammock Landings Mall there on the right, and they'll be just tucked into the community there on the left-hand side in Palm Bay. I think I was reading you guys have been there, since 1991? Is that right?
Yeah, so the church started in 89, I believe it was, 89, 88, something like that, with Pastor Stuart Rowan, the founding pastor, and they started out of his house as a life group Bible study, and then they eventually went into, I believe it was a store plaza building, and then I don't know if they were at a school temporarily while they were building the building, but they purchased this land. I think it was in 89, 90, I can't remember when it was. But then they eventually built this building, and then this is where we've been for about 30 years, little over 30 years.
I did see that it was previously under a different name. It was Christian Development Center.
Yeah, that was the founding name they came up with. I guess that was kind of the catchy thing to do back in the 90s, was to be different when it came to your name. So, but when we sat down, like kind of about I was almost a full year here, and I sat down with the board and was like, hey, I think we need to look into a name change, just because, every person I talked to, because it had been kind of a shrinking church for a while, and but I mean, they'd had in the late 90s, they were pushing almost 200 and doing some amazing things, but they just just because of some different things, just kind of seeing some not as good days, and so I just said, hey, I think new life, new things, we need to change the name. Just the fact that we don't have church in the name, I think is it's going to help people. If we actually put church in the name, it's going to help people know that it's actually a church. Because I remember, when I first talked to our DS about coming here, he's like, it's Christian Development Center. And I'm like, wait, is it a church? Or like, is it a school? And he's like, no, it's a church. That's just their name. I'm like, oh, okay. So, and I wasn't the only one that had that problem. So we were able to sit down, and that's ultimately how we kind of settled in on Christian Life Church, because it kind of felt in the same vibe of Christian Development Center, but it was Christian Life Church. And that was we knew that with the new life of the church and kind of trying to revitalize it, we wanted to bring life.
Yeah, I think that must have been maybe something in the 90s. I don't know if you're familiar with this church on Malabar Road, kind of south heading, so actually on Babcock Road, heading south of Malabar Road, Brevard Worship Center. I attended that church for a number of years growing up, and kind of similar there. I was like, Brevard Worship Center is very kind of secular. It almost sounds new agey, so I think that's what you had to be scared of.
Yeah, and I even saw one, I think it's down on Emerson. If you go south of Malabar, there's a church called Christian Life, or not Christian Life. It's what is it? It's a center, but it's the same thing. But so it must have been in that time frame. They just kind of were trying to be different and new.
Yeah, it's almost like, is this like a church of like scientism or something? It's almost the way it feels a little bit.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
So you came to the church, when now was this?
So I came actually in, April, Easter Sunday. So it was in April 2020. So I came right in the middle of COVID. When I agreed to come on to the church as the pastor, there was this virus, but we didn't know it was COVID, and so it was definitely a challenge. But, I've been here now pushing 5 years, over about 4.5, pushing 5 years. It's been full of its challenges, being in a small church. I was actually a first-time lead pastor. I was an associate at 2 other churches, but the church before this, I was a young adult and children's pastor. And so with the plan, I was actually supposed to plant a church in Mount Dora, Florida, and then the Lord just had different plans. So kind of the way it rolls.
Well, maybe you can share a little bit about the Nazarene denomination. I'm not too familiar with the inner workings, though. Do they do they plant pastors? Is that how it works? Or is it totally up to you as far as where you take the call?
Well, I mean, for each individual minister, their calling is going to be different,
Mhm.
obviously, and the Nazarene Church supports all the different callings. Like there's evangelists, you've got people that are like lay ministers, that don't necessarily feel that call to like full time ministry, but they're more in a lay person calling. Um, there's interim pastors. Then you have like your full blown elders that are like me, that are ordained in the Church of the Nazarene, and they can come in all different shapes and sizes. It's got multiple facets, but the Nazarene Church, I can't remember the exact year that it started, but it started a long time ago. Back in like the early 1900s, like maybe 40s, 50s. I can't remember.
I
It's been a
did
long.
look it up. I think it's 1908 is when the official Church of the Nazarene started.
Yeah, there was a group of several denominations that kind of joined together, which made up the Nazarene. There were split offs from denominations, but the ultimate, the big selling factor, I say selling factor, but big thing that the Nazarene Church has always been about has been that holiness message, sanctification, and that's kind of been their big thing for a long time. But also, there it was kind of like, because they were big on Wesleyan Arminianism, and they're big followers of John Wesley and people like that. That was kind of their roots. But yeah, I mean, it's got a rich history. And what's funny is I actually didn't really grow up in the Nazarene Church. I was actually kind of grew up more non-denominational, but I was very interconnected with like the Bible Methodist belt of churches and through the Midwest, and then the Wesleyan Church, and then I was around the Nazarene churches. So I was kind of around all the churches, but I was kind of my roots kind of go back to that Wesleyan Arminian background. So
Gotcha.
so when I started in ministry, I actually wasn't in the Nazarene Church. I was at a church that is called Church of Christ and Christian Union, it's like if you took the Nazarene Church and just put it in a smaller box and just changed a few little words in the manual. They're practically the same thing as the Nazarene, just a much smaller scale. And then the Lord worked it out, and I shifted over. My oldest brother was in the Nazarenes here in Florida, and he said, "Hey man, we've got a great DS. You should come check it out. I'm sure he could get you in." And that's kind of how I got started in the Nazarene Church.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, this is not a theology podcast. I mean, I know a little bit of theology, but it's kind of, we like this broad overview stuff. But so I did see though that it has ties to like Methodism, and I think most people would be more familiar with the Methodist Church, but it's kind of the same tradition there, huh?
Yeah, and so like and even my wife, like she grew up Baptist, so like
Mhm.
when she heard Nazarene, she's like, "Is that like a cult or something?"
Yeah.
And she's not the first person that thought that, but I think it's just in the name itself. But the roots go back to Methodism itself with John Wesley and Charles Wesley and
Isn't it?
all those guys. So like the United Methodist Church, the Bible Methodist, there's like all kinds of they all kind of they're like distant relatives.
Yeah, it's interesting because I guess the Church of the Nazarene is the largest Wesleyan tradition church. So I don't know why more people know the Methodist name more.
I think the Wesleyan Church would be up there with them, but I think the Nazarene Church is still on a much larger scale even than the Wesleyan.
Yeah, you guys seem to be a very big church. Is there a broad presence in Brevard County now, or what kind of is the situation here?
So in Brevard County, I'm not sure where all these areas are as far as in relation to Brevard County, but I know we've got quite a few churches. So as we go down as far as Vero Beach, to Sebastian, there's one in Palm Bay. We've got one in Melbourne. We've got Rockledge. There's Cocoa. I'm not sure if this Daytona is that Brevard County.
That's a little too north for us.
Yeah. So, but
we go up to like Titusville, Mims.
Yeah. So Titusville. Yeah, we go up all that way. Pretty much, we got churches pretty much in every main city, kind of along through Brevard County.
I know you said there's this focus on, I guess, what would be called like holiness or sanctification. Is that that's like the primary differentiator? Like, what would it be for somebody who walks into the doors? Would it feel different from another church?
I think it depends on the church that you're going into. And when it comes to the Nazarene Church, I've been in a lot of different Nazarene churches, and depending on the pastor and the congregation, like if you have like an older congregation that is a Nazarene church, it could be a little more traditional where they're listening to hymns and, kind of a little bit more old school. Where you come into our church and it feels like you could walk into a non-denominational congregation and you're going to feel, We do more contemporary set of worship. We do hymns as well, but you know, but the message I think that I preach is always going to be found grounded in biblical truth, which is what I think any church. It doesn't matter what church you are, you should be grounded in
Right.
that. We're a very spirit-led congregation. I'd hope that every Nazarene church is that way. I can't say every church is the same, but specifically for our church, we would hope that the moment you walk in the door, you feel firstly welcomed. Like, wow, man, I feel really welcome. Like I'm already part of the family, and then I just have this connection with the spirit that's in this place. Just a spirit of worship, a spirit of just we want God to be here 100% of the time, and we want Him to be leading in every service. So that's kind of the goal in every experience that people walk into. We want them to feel welcomed and feel like, man, that was a great service. I walked away better than when I came in.
Yeah, and I attended Christian Life and, felt totally normal to me. I don't think like Church of the Nazarene sounds even cultish. Growing up now, I did actually attend First United Methodist for a number of years with my family. My dad was the contemporary worship leader there. And we come from a very non-denominational background, and that church was far more traditional than what we were used to. And I do kind of understand that Methodism and Wesleyanism does kind of like that middle ground between totally non-denominational and the Episcopal Church. Because I think from what I recall, Wesley kind of came out of that Anglican Episcopalian tradition.
And the thing about John Wesley was, he was very traditional a lot of ways, from the baptism to doing communion. Like it was like a regular thing for him. Like he believed in the means of grace, like all those different things. Like he did that on a regular basis, and he was actually a big proponent of where you actually got discipleship in the church. And actually, if you look at the history of the church, George Whitefield, who ended up coming over to the United States and was one of the greatest preachers in that time frame, he even pointed back, and there was a little bit of a rift. They were all connected. So George Whitefield, John Wesley, and Charles Wesley, there was this connection there. And at one point there was kind of almost a little bit of a rift, probably just because of how they did things. George Whitefield was a little bit more brash and kind of very outspoken, loud speaker. John Wesley was probably not quite that way, but, and Charles Wesley, but when he came over, he pointed back to the great awakening that the Wesleys had, and he had a big impact, and a lot of people got saved. But he even pointed back to, he wished he had embraced and not, he would have brought them in the fold more, because he said the Wesleys, I got people saved, but they actually were the ones that came along and helped in the discipleship process of new believers coming into the faith. They were big proponents of, okay, you don't just get saved, you actually have to go a little deeper, and you have to, and there needs to be a discipleship process. And so they were really excelled in that, where George Whitefield was just kind of that evangelist that came in, brought the house down, and then moved on. And there wasn't a structure left behind to help those new believers, where that's where the Wesleys were extremely good of bringing that mentality in. And so I don't want to say we're getting in the weeds, but it's a cool thing to look back on when you look at church history, and when it comes to the United Methodist Church, the Nazarene, Wesleyan, Bible Methodist, all the different groups that kind of come from that same background. There's a lot of rich history there.
What is the emphasis on holiness and sanctification, and how is it maybe different from other churches? Because it seems like that is really what the Nazarene denomination kind of hinges on, is that concept.
Yeah, and I think especially for our church, one thing that I've always, from the moment I got here, that I grew up with this, as I got into ministry, I preached this, and I believe it 100%, and I believe the Nazarenes believe this too. But too many times you'll go into a church, and I like to call it shallow Christianity, where people get saved, they get baptized, and maybe they even show up every Sunday to church, but there's this lack of depth when they go out Monday through Saturday, and they're still kind of living the same way. I think what the Nazarene church, and I'm not saying every church is perfect, but I say what I would say I try and emphasize within our own congregation is, hey, that sanctification process is being set apart, as Romans 12:1-2 says, be not conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. My whole goal when I talk and preach, obviously I'm sharing the gospel all the time, and I want people to come to salvation. But the goal, and I say in our church, specifically at Christian Life Church, is that we see people not just get saved and come to the knowledge of Jesus, but that they go deeper, and that they themselves all they don't just kind of stay in the same pattern that they were in, but there's a transformation that happens within their own life, that then trickles out into the people that are around them and in their workplace and wherever they're at. And I think that's the emphasis that I've tried to focus on when I've been here as the pastor. And I think really every church should be that way, but because I think that's what Jesus called us to. But
Right.
that's what we would have a focus on.
So that's kind of where that name Christian Development Center comes from. It's that discipleship.
Yeah, I think that'd probably be a good thing to say. Yeah.
I'm kind of curious too, if maybe you could talk a little bit more about Christian life specifically. And I know I talked with other pastors about this. I know some churches have like 5-year plans, or maybe the Nazarene church kind of has like visions for what they want to see happen in Palm Bay and Brevard. Where do you see Christian life going?
Being that I've been here 4.5 years, I think it's adapted over time as I've been the pastor and as a first-time lead pastor. I think at the end of the day, my goal has been to come and envelop myself within this community, because this is where I'm ministering. Palm Bay and maybe certain areas of Melbourne and Granville, Carrick, or wherever. But I mean, Palm Bay itself, that's kind of where my area of ministry extends to. It sounds funny, but when I first got here, the church was probably running 8 to 10 people, and it was in the middle of COVID. My goal was to just that the church didn't shut down, But I think now I think the goal has been to build the foundation here at Christian Life Church. Like over the last almost 5 years, we've been developing fixing up some of our building, because over 30 years it can kind of get dilapidated in certain areas. So we've been trying to fix up our facility so it feels welcoming when you walk in the door, and it doesn't feel like, okay, that paint is not there, or that it's just that's just some basic foundational from the building side. From the ministry side, trying to we had to start up our youth program again, children's program, building the structures within those things. Let's be honest, when people come into a church, especially with people, and I've got 2 kids, so when you walk in, your parents aren't necessarily thinking about maybe themselves in that situation. They're thinking about their kids. What is this like for my kids, and how did they like it? And so I think our goal has been to build a place that is family friendly, that but not just for families. It needs to be for anybody that walks in the door. I don't care if you're homeless on the street, a drug addict, that you've been in drug addiction for years. Like, our goal is that it doesn't matter what area or background that you come from, that you feel welcome in our church. And I think that is what we've been trying to build, is a changing in the culture that is Spirit-led, Scripture-fed, worship-based prayer and culture. So that's ultimately what we've been trying to build over the last 4.5 years. Because when you come into a church like this, it does take some revamping and rebuilding of culture, because there was a reason it got there in the first place. So I don't know if I'm helping my cause here, for people listening, but my goal is I always tell this to people: I'm never going to lie to you, which is a good thing, obviously. And my wife doesn't like it when I say that. She's like, well, you're a pastor, you shouldn't lie. But it's like, I'm going to always be honest, about everything. But, our goal is that we would hope that you could find a home here, and that you would feel fed scripturally, that your family would be ministered to, and that when you come in, you leave feeling like, I can go out and make a difference, not only because I've been fed and I feel like I can go to another level. But that's the goal.
Yeah, most churches I talk to don't have 5-year plans, so totally in the same boat. The Christian life, what we're trying to develop here is pretty broadly known. You need to be serving your congregation. You need to be coming alongside them and helping with those discipleship aspects, which is what it sounds like the Nazarene Church is all about. And just scrolling your Facebook page, like I've seen, you guys have been doing a lot of different family events, trunk or treats, and it looks like barbecues, and kind of building that Christian culture for your congregation.
It's taken some time and energy, but it's what we're trying to get to, and our goal. And one of the things that, and kind of talking about some of those events, one of the things that I've seen some churches do, and but I wanted to make sure we were not this way. When we do, so like we did a trunk or treat this last fall. I think it was in October. Well, I think that's when Halloween is. We did trunk or treat fall festival, and we had I think over 300 some people show up. But we
Wow.
literally we gave away free hot dogs, free waters, free. I think we had shaved ice. Like we had all these different things, and we had jump bounce houses. Everything was free. And some of my people were like, "Well, why are we doing all this for free? We could potentially raise some money." I'm like, "Our goal is not to raise money off the community. Our goal is to minister to the community and let them know that we care about them and we're here to serve you guys." And so, and that's why I've gotten connected, and not just in the local areas of Palm Bay. That's why I'm connected with the city of Palm Bay. So when they call me up and I'll go do the invocations at the city hall meetings. I mean, not that the church and politics should be like this, but I think we should be leading the way in that regard spiritually. And
Yeah.
so I've been doing that for the last several years. And so I like when I say our goal is to minister to the community, it's in all aspects. We want to serve our community and really show them that they could have a home here if they feel like this is where they want to be. And that takes time with anything, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
You've been in Florida now for what, like 4 years, almost going on 5 years now?
No, I actually have been in Florida about almost 8 years now.
Oh, okay.
Because I was at a couple other churches before I came here, but I've been at this church specifically for almost pushing 5 years.
Pushing 5 years. In Brevard County, pushing 5 years.
April, 5 years, yeah.
Okay. Maybe you could speak to, outside of your church, just kind of looking at the broader community from what you've seen. What are the greatest, or maybe a single issue that you really see facing Brevard? And the ways that not only your church, but maybe churches could kind of unite to, come together to help solve this problem. Is there some major issue you see in Brevard?
I think, and I've connected with one of our other Nazarene pastors in Melbourne. I know he's in different areas of, people that have needs within our community, whether they're homeless or, people that are kind of down and out, just that, don't have places to go. If we all connected and had more of a focus on, where it says in scripture about taking care of the widows and orphans and, people that are homeless, like, if we had somewhat of a focus together as combined congregations, I think we could have more of an impact in this area of Brevard County than we do. I know there's some great ministries out there that do a lot of great things, but I feel like I've seen a lot of people that, I get calls on a regular basis, because I've helped people in the past. I can't help people all the time, but it's like, and it, to me, that says something. It's because word gets around in that area and those people that, because they're all kind of connected. And I think if as we as a group of churches did more of a combined thing, I think we could have more of an impact with those people that are struggling to get through life. I think I love what you're doing. I think when you came in that Sunday and you're like, "Hey, I'm with Christians of Brevard," and I mean, because I'd been actually looking, or I don't want to say I'd been looking, I've been kind of curious to know where, like with different pastors, like if there's like a connection to pastors, which there may be in our area, but I hadn't really gotten connected because I didn't know where to look, and I think so. Having this is great, and I think I wish more pastors from every denomination would connect, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what church you come from, our message should still be the same, that we're all connected to Jesus. And if we can, stay behind that, but also connect and say, hey, how can we help each other? I think the church would, as a whole, would be much more impactful in Brevard County and in the city of Palm Bay specifically.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said that. This podcast is kind of just a platform for each pastor to kind of put out the call on the issues that they would like to work together on. And I think I just had a conversation with Pastor Aaron of River Run Christian, which is up a little ways, O'Galley area, Brevard. And same thing, they have a big issue with food insecurity up there and poverty, and it's all very related. So, and these are issues that Christian pastors all over Brevard are looking to solve in their own unique ways, but efforts could be amplified if there was a little bit of coordination that could happen. So I think that's a great way. That's things that pastors agree on, that churches agree on. They would love to help serve the homeless community and in poverty here in Brevard. So that's a great way that churches could work together. I hope we could see some of that in the future for sure.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay, well, why don't you just, as you close out, tell people, maybe they're looking for a church, they're not attending a church right now here in Palm Bay. How could they get connected with you guys? What time do you guys meet for service? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so obviously our name is Christian Life Church. We're here in Palm Bay. Connor kind of gave kind of where we're at, but our address is 343 Nail Street Northeast in Palm Bay. And we meet on Sundays at 10:30 a.m. And we try and stay right at 10:30. So if you come in at 10:31, we probably started service. So, we got plenty of parking. So if you want to come in, you can join us. You're going to feel welcome. We have coffee and usually pastries, so you can get your morning coffee. If you're running late, don't worry, we'll have it for you. We just are about to start up our youth ministry. We took a break for the summer, but we're going to be starting up. We usually meet at Wednesdays. I believe it's at 6:00. If not, you probably could go to our website and find that out. It's at clcpalmbay.org. And I know we've been having some issues with our website, so I'll have to, if you go there and you can't find it, you can always call me. My number is 208-519-1385. And I know I'm putting my number out there, but I think it's important that people can get in touch with the church. So, that's my number. And you can call me directly and we can get you connected. And then we do life groups, like kind of group Bible studies, kind of in the beginning and end of the year. And it varies, and usually we kind of I want to say January through, I want to say it was April. We did a study, I think it was on Tuesday nights, and went for about an hour and a half. And we usually had food and fellowship, and then we would sit and usually go through a book of the Bible or something like that. We should hopefully be starting those up here in the next month or two. But we'll see how it all works out. I gotta figure out the timeline of everything. But yeah, that's how you can get connected with us and get involved.
Pastor Chris, thank you so much for joining the conversation. Really appreciate it. Loved learning about your church there and the Nazarene denomination. It was informational and I think helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Connor. Thanks for having me on.
God bless.